Make no mistake, Europe is currently involved in a war. And tragically, on this occasion, it is a war against an enemy within, and it's a war about liberty. There have been some truly horrific attacks over the last couple of weeks. In France, a teenager who twice tried to flee to Syria and whose only check on movement was an electronic tag slit the throat of a Catholic priest during Mass. In Germany, a failed asylum seeker killed himself after failing to detonate a suicide bomb at a music festival. That's just two among many. Fortunately, I'm not a politician, so I don't need to come up with a supposed solution. What I can come up with, though, is this: a battle plan. 1. Failed asylum seekers, such as the suicide bomber in Germany, are to be deported instantly. 2. If a would-be attacker born here or elsewhere wants to go to Syria, why should we stop them? And 3. All new arrivals must be checked and processed in weeks rather than years. It won't win the war, but it could help save lives.
Your battle plan obviously contains lots of logic. That some of those things people think will be happening already. But what I don't understand is where you said two among many in terms of the attacks, you seem to be laying these attacks at the feet of asylum seekers.
Not in all cases, but in some.
But in fact, the evidence is the opposite of that they are the minority of people committing these attacks. And actually, the people who are committing these attacks, by and large, just to put some facts into this debate, which I think is important, are homegrown of that country. So, for instance, the man who killed 84 people in Nice was a Tunisian-born Frenchman.
Well, that doesn't make him homeborn.
The 3 suicide bombers who blew themselves up in Brussels were all Belgian nationals.
He was born in Tunisia.
No, in the sense of they live in those countries, they have a right to be there, and they haven't been failed in a system called Asylum.
What I never understand with you...
No. So sorry, can I get to the end of the point? I'm not a bleeding heart left-winger. I like facts.
Why can't... And you've just admitted that the guy in Nice was born in Tunisia and then is now dual national French-Tunisian. Well, he's not anymore, he's dead. If we can just stop one priest having his throat cut, or festival goers in a festival in Ansbach, why wouldn't we do that? Why do you immediately see...
The issue is more complex than you're making out. The issue is far more complex.
But why don't we tackle the easy marks?
The French officials have admitted themselves they do not know how to handle this. They don't know how to handle the fact that these are lone attacks, often people self-radicalising in their bedrooms, and then you've got us doing the PR of the ISIS machine by rolling it on news channels like this, not couching it in facts, and then ISIS come along and go, yeah, he was one of us. And half the time they weren't even linked.
Are you seriously suggesting we don't run video, and we don't run the story, and we don't put pictures up? Because that's what Le Monde, the French newspaper, is doing. You're part of the problem that is creating a climate of fear, when actually we have an issue where governments do not know how to deal with this. This is something that countries like Israel have been dealing with since they were created. They have people who are self-aware all the time. They immediately assume you are not safe at a big, large gathering. And outside synagogues, whenever I go to one, I'm questioned within an inch of my life, security-wise, which I'm very sorry to say is going to have to become the case when we are dealing with loners who live within communities, often with legal passports. Are you honestly telling me you're happy that in the case of that priest in Normandy, the only security you had on that bloke was an electronic tag that appeared wasn't even working?
Of course not.
Thank you.
But he was mentally ill.
I'm going to back Nick up on this.
Don't disgrace people who are mentally ill by saying that.
He was
that is so unfair.
Unwell.
Because people who are genuinely mentally ill do not go around slitting the throats of priests. Do not use that, because it's not fair with people who have mental health. That is just a cop-out. He was mentally ill. He's a barbaric murderer. He's not mentally ill. It's unfair to people in this country who have mental health issues. Michelle.
Sorry, you have just completely made out.
You can't make an excuse about him being mentally ill. That's not fair to folk watching this who are mentally ill.
Can you just... I'm sorry.
It's just not fair. He's a barbaric killer.
I have not made an excuse.
You just said he's mentally ill.
Sorry,
but
it's part of the
just
fabric.
One type of mental illness, though.
No, OK,
So
Michelle.
yes, he's mentally ill.
Let's park the mental illness thing for a bit and come back to your point, Nick, which is... we're talking about people that are asylum seekers.
In some instances.
Yeah, in some instances.
In fewer instances.
Yes, but regardless, we're talking about... That's the group of people that we're currently talking about, to your point, Nick. Now, I agree with you on all three of those points.
Good.
I feel that if somebody... What worries me about all these terrorist incidents at the moment is how many of them are known to the forces for whatever reason, to the security services. So many of these people are known. And I completely wholeheartedly agree with you on all of the points, but specifically, if you've got failed asylum, get out. What are you even doing here? If you're not supposed to be here, then you shouldn't be here, full stop.
I don't disagree with that.
The people that are talking about going to Syria, again, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Fantastic.
I do not understand why we have this desperate need to stop people who want to go to Syria and go and fight with IS. If that's what you want to do, go away. And what we need to do is we need to stop them ever coming back in. And that's my worry, that are we good enough, if those people choose to go over there, are we good enough to prevent them coming back in? I'm not sure.
Great. Nick, you'll remember internment.
Yep.
When the British government decided to intern anyone they thought could be involved with the IRA. And what did we do? We politicised another generation of Catholics into taking violent action. Clearly our whole system for dealing with people coming into this country and we're not claiming asylum has to be speeded up. It has to be faster. It's not a very effective, efficient system, and the legal system needs to be changed and structured. But you have to be very careful not to take instant judgments because of what's happening. What worries me about what's happening is that it's now so regular that sometime in the next few weeks a similar thing will happen and it won't make the front pages. It'll be somewhere in the back of the paper because it's become the norm. And that's the really scary bit to think about this, the speed, how often it's happening. But you've got to have a thought-out policy. And I'm not sure you actually ever can deal with it, in truth. I think if you've got that many people who could become radicalised, not because they've been to Syria to be trained or anything else, but because they're fed up with society and life.
If they want to go to Syria, let them go. Why do we try and fetch them back?
I think we're muddling lots of things.
Why? I'm with Emma on this because I agree something has to be done. You know, we have a horrific situation where there are young men who are homeborn, who have, if we're looking at this country, have British passports, who have been radicalised for whatever reason. But what you cannot forget, Nick, is there are systems in other European countries who have the same issues we have, such as Denmark, who are actually getting results in terms of de-radicalising these young men. Because the issue we have, Michelle, is, yes, you can say, we're not going to stop them leaving, but they are citizens. So we're not in a position to be able to revoke their citizenship, so they will be able to come back. So what we have to do is figure out how do we infiltrate these groups to prevent these young men becoming radicalised in the first place. And it is possible to do. We just don't know how to do it yet. So I think, like Emma said, we are muddling a selection of problems. So if we're looking at the case of an asylum seeker, that is not the norm. This was a person who did have mental issues, who, of course, should have been sent home. The system failed in that situation.
As it failed in France.
As it failed
given
in
a
France.
bloke a tag.
But if we're talking about homegrown radicalisation, we need to figure out some sort of mechanism to actually undo the issue. And, you know, I grew up in an area where I went to a college where some of the boys that were in our college became radicalised. This is like 20 years ago.
Radicalised for what? In what way? For what?
Islamic extremism.
Really?
Yeah. And
20 years ago?
Yeah. And our teachers, and at the time no one knew what that was, and our teachers had no idea how to deal with it. You know, these were boys that we were all friends with, you know, we hung out with, and over a summer they started going to a local mosque and stopped talking to the rest of us. And we saw this change. We didn't know what to do. The teachers didn't know what to do.
Do you think they know what to do today?
No, I still don't think they would.
That's terrible. So 2 decades on, we haven't moved forward.
And now it is a national problem.
I mean, you're assuming there's a solution.
There has to be.
Well, no, you said at the top of your thing, you don't have to make those solutions.
Who would be a politician
now? Denmark,
who would be a politician
Greg,
now?
in Denmark, there's a wonderful policeman called, I think it's Stefan Nielsen, and he has a brilliant programme that's managed to de-radicalise a lot of young boys.
I think, sadly, June, while we're in much agreement about the muddying of the waters here, is that what French officials that I saw said, which I really struck a chord with me, is that we don't know how to get to people now because we don't know who they are.
Yeah.
Right? So we used to be in a situation where we could target areas and say, let's prevent.
But they knew the killer of that priest.
They know most of the attackers.
Yeah, well, that's
allowed out
most of
between
them.
certain hours.
How many like him? Probably
in France,
hundreds and hundreds.
Do you know how many people are on the S list
Yeah.
in France? 10,400.
So you're suggesting they could have done something at about 10,400?
Well, no, but God, Michael, we've got to do something.
No, but it's easy to say this horrible man went in and killed a piece. We knew he existed.
And we
should have done something. But if there's 10,400, you're going to take them all, put them all in prison?
No.